Chapter 7. I am furious as I walk through the corridors of the palace, steps behind Cardon, followed by his guard to keep me from trying to slip away. My choices now are not good. He will take me back to his enormous chambers, and then what? Will he force a guard to hold me and divest me of anything that might protect me from glamour, jewelry, clothing, until I am stripped bare? If so, he cannot fail to notice my scars he has seen before. And if he peels off my gloves, there can be no doubt. The missing half digit will give me away. If I am undressed, he will know me. I am going to have to make a break for it. There's the secret passageways in his rooms. From there, I can get out through one of the crystal windows. I glance at the guards. If they were dismissed, I could get past Cardan through the secret passageway and out. But how to get rid of them? I considered the smile Cardan wore on the days when he announced what he was going to do to me. Maybe he wants to see Tarin naked. He desired me, after all, and Tarin and I are identical. Perhaps if I volunteer to undress myself, he'll agree to dismiss his guard. He did say he'd examine me alone, which leads me to an even more daring thought. Maybe I could distract him thoroughly enough that he wouldn't know me at all. Perhaps I could blow out the candles and be naked only in the half-light. Those thoughts occupy me so completely that I barely notice a hooped servant carrying a tray supporting a carafe of a pale celery green wine and a collection of blown glass goblets. She is coming from the opposite direction, and when we pass, the tray digs into my side. She gives a cry. I feel a shove, and we both tumble to the floor, glass shattering around us. The guards hold. Cardan turns. I look over at the girl, baffled and surprised. My dress is soaked with wine. The folk are seldom clumsy, and this doesn't feel like an accident. Then the girl's fingers touch one of my gloved hands. I feel the press of leather and steel against the inside of my wrist. She's pushing a sheathed knife up my sleeve under cover of cleaning up the spilled contents of the tray. Her head dips close to mine as she brushes shards of glass from my hair. "Your father is coming for you," she whispers. "Wait for a signal, then stop the guard closest to the door and run." "What signal?" I whisper back, pretending to help her sweep up the debris. "Oh no, my lady, your pardon," she says in a normal voice with a bob of her head. "You ought not to lower yourself." One of the High King's personal guard catches my arm. "Come along," he says, lifting me to my feet. I press my hands to my heart to keep the knife from slipping out my sleeve. I resume my walk toward Cardan's rooms, my thoughts thrown into every more confusion. Madok is coming to save Tarin. It's a reminder that while I am no longer in his good graces, she helped him wriggle out of his vows of service to the High King. She gave him half an army. I wonder what plans he has for her, what rewards he's promised. I imagine he will be pleased to have her no longer encumbered with luck. But when Madok comes, what's his plan? Whom is he expecting to fight? And what will he do when he comes for her and finds me instead? Two servants open heavy double doors to the High King's chambers, and he goes inside, throwing himself down on a low couch. I follow, standing awkwardly in the middle of the carpet. None of the guards so much as enter his chambers. As soon as I step over the threshold, the door shut behind me. This time with a grim finality. I don't have to worry about persuading Cardan to dismiss the guard. They never lingered. At least I have a knife. The parlor is as I remember it from council meetings. It carries the scent of smoke and verbena and clover. Cardan himself lunges, his boot feet resting on a stone table carved in the shape of a griffin, claws raised to strike. He gives me a quicksilver, conspirational grin that seems completely at odds with the way he spoke to me from his throne. "Well," he says, patting the couch beside him, "didn't you get my letters?" "What?" I am confused enough that the word comes out like a croak. "You never replied to a one," he goes on. "I began to wonder if you'd misplaced your ambition in the mortal world." This must be a test. This must be a trap. "Your Majesty," I say stiffly, "I thought you brought me here to assure yourself I had neither charm nor amulet." A single eyebrow rises, and his smile deepens. "I will, if you like. Shall I command you to remove your clothes?" "I don't mind." What are you doing? I say finally, desperately. What are you playing at? He's looking at me as though somehow I am the one who's behaving strangely. Youth, you can't really think I don't know it's you. I knew you from the moment you walked into the braff. I shake my head, reeling. That's not possible. If he knew it was me, then I wouldn't be here. I would be imprisoned in the Tower of Forgetting. I would be preparing for my execution. But maybe he's pleased I violated the terms of the exile. Maybe he's glad I put myself in his power by doing so. Maybe that's his game. He stands up from the couch, his gaze intense. Come closer. I take a step backwards. He frowns. My concealers told me that you met with an ambassador from the Court of Teeth, that you must be working with Madoc now. I was unwilling to believe it, but seeing the way you look at me, perhaps I must. Tell me it's not true. For a moment, I don't understand, but then I do, grim amok. I'm not the betrayer here, I say, but I am suddenly conscious of the blade in my sleeve. Are you angry about? He cuts himself off, looking at my face more carefully. No, you're afraid. But why would you be afraid of me? I am trembling with a feeling that I barely understand. I'm not, I lie. I hate you. You send me into exile. Everything you say to me, everything you promise, it's all a trick. And I am stupid enough to believe you once. The sheathed knife slides easily to my hand. Of course it was a trick, he begins, then seizes the weapon and bites off whatever he was about to say. Everything shakes. An explosion, close by, and intense enough that we both stumble. Books fall and scatter over the floor. Crystal orbs slip off their stands to roll across floorboards. Cardan and I look at each other in shared surprise. Then his eyes narrow in accusation. This is the part where I am supposed to stop him and run. A moment later, there's the unmistakable sound of metal striking metal, close by. Stay here, I say, drawing the blade and tossing the sheath onto the ground. Youth, don't, he calls after me as I slip into the hole. One of his guards lies dead, a polearm jutting out of her ribcage. Others clash with Madoc's hand-picked soldiers, battle-hardened and deadly. I know them. I know that they fight without pity, without mercy, and if they've made it this close to the High King, Cardan is in terrible danger. I think again of the passageway I was planning to slip through. I can get him out that way, in exchange for a pardon. Either Cardan can end my exile and live, or hope his guard wins against Madoc's soldiers. I am about to head back to put the deal to him when one of the helmeted soldiers grabs hold of me. I have Tarin, she calls gruffly. I recognize her. Celia. Part Huldra and entirely terrifying. I'd seen her carve up a partridge in a way that made her delight in slaughter very clear. I stab at her hand, but the thick hide of her gloves turns my blade. A steel-covered arm wraps around my waist. Daughter, Madoc says in his gravely voice. Daughter, don't be afraid. His hand comes up with a cloth smelling of cloying sweetness. He presses it over my nose and mouth. I feel my limbs go loose, and a moment later, I feel nothing at all. Chapter 8. When I wake, I am in woods I don't recognize. I don't smell the ubiquitous salt of the sea, and I don't hear the crash of the waves. Everything is ferns, leaf mold, the crackle of a fire, and the hum of distant voices. I sit up. I am lying on heavy blankets, with more on top of me, horse blankets, albeit elegant ones. I see a solidly built carriage nearby, the door hanging open. I am still in Tarin's dress, still wearing her gloves. Don't mind the dizziness, says a kind voice. Oriana. She's sitting nearby, dressed in a gown of what appears to be felted wool over several layers of skirts. Her hair is pulled back into a green cap. She looks nothing like the diaphanous courtier she's been the whole time I've known her. It will pass. I run a hand through my hair. Come loose now, the pin's still in it. Where are we? What happened? Your father didn't like the thought of your staying on the ice to begin with, but without Locke's protection, it was only a matter of time before the High King came up with an excuse to make you his hostage. I wrap a hand over my face. By the fire, a spindly, insectile fire stirs a big boat. You want soup, mortal? I shake my head. You want to be soup? It asks hopefully. Oriana wipes it off and takes a kettle from the ground beside the fire. She pours the steaming contents into a wooden cup. The liquid is redolent of bark and mushrooms. I take a sip and abruptly feel less dizzy. Was the High King captured? I ask, recalling when I was taken. Is he alive? Maddox was unable to get to him, she says, as though his being alive is a disappointment. I hate how relieved I feel. But I start, meaning to ask how the bottle ended. I remember myself in time to bite my tongue. Over the years, Tarin and I have occasionally pretended to be each other at home. We mostly got away with it, so long as it didn't go on for too long or we weren't too obvious about it. If I don't do anything stupid, I have a good chance of pulling this off until I can escape. And then what? Cardan was so discerningly casual, as though sentencing me to death was some shared joke between us. And talking of messages I never got. What could they have said? Could he have intended to pardon me? Could he have offered me some kind of bargain? I cannot imagine a letter from Cardan. Would it have been short and formal, full of gossip, wine-stained? Another trick? Of course it was a trick. Whatever he intended, he must believe I am working with Maddox now. And though it shouldn't bother me, it does. Your father's priority was to get you out, Oriana reminds me. Not just that, right? I say. He can't have attacked the palace of Elham for me alone. My thoughts are unruly, chasing one another around. I am no longer sure of anything. I don't question Maddox's plans, she says neutrally. Nor should you. I forgot how it felt to be bossed around by Oriana, always treated as though my curiosity would immediately create some scandal for our family. It's especially galling to be treated this way now, when her husband stole half an army from the High King and is planning a coup against him. Grima Mock's words echo in my mind. The card of teeth have thrown in their lot with the old Grand General, your father, and a whole host of other traitors. I have it on good authority that your High King is to be dethroned before the next full moon. That seems a lot more pressing now, but since I am supposed to be Tarin, I don't respond. After a moment, she looks repentant. The important thing is for you to rest. I am sure being dragged out here is a lot to take in on top of losing luck. Yes, I say. It's a lot. I think I do want to rest a while, if that's alright. Oriana reaches over and smooths my hair back from my brow, a fond gesture that I am sure she wouldn't have made if she knew it was me, Jude, that she was touching. Tarin admires Oriana, and very close in a way that she and I are not, for many reasons, not the least of which is that I helped hide Oak in the mortal world, away from the crown. Since then, Oriana has been both grateful and resentful, but in Tarin, I think, Oriana sees someone she understands, and maybe Tarin is like Oriana. Although the murder of Locke has called that and everything else I thought I knew about my twin sister into question. I close my eyes, although I mean to puzzle through how to get away. Instead, I sleep. The next time I wake, I am in a carriage, and we are on the move. Maddox and Oriana sit on the opposite bench. The curtains are drawn, but I hear the sounds of a traveling camp, of monks and soldiers. I hear the distinctive growl of goblins calling to one another. I look over at the redcap who raised me, my father, and the murderer of my father. I take in the whiskers from a few days of not shaving. His familiar human face. He looks exhausted. Finally up, he says, with a smile that shows too many teeth. I am uncomfortably reminded of Grimamok. I try to smile back as I straighten. I don't know whether something in the soup knocked me out, or the death-sweet Maddox made me inhale isn't out of my system, but I don't remember being loaded into the carriage. How long was I asleep? Maddox makes a negligent gesture. The High King's tram-tapping quest is 3 days past. I feel fuzzy-headed, afraid I will say the wrong thing and be discovered. At least my easy slide into unconsciousness must have made me seem to be my sister. Before I became a captive of the Undersea, I trained my body to be immune to poisons, but now I am exactly as vulnerable as Tarin. If I keep my wits about me, I can get away without either of them knowing. I consider what part of Maddox's conversation Tarin would focus on. Probably the matter of luck. I take a deep breath. I told them I had done nothing. Even Glamour? I insisted. Maddox doesn't look as though he sees through my disguise, but he does look as though he thinks I am being an idiot. I doubt that boy king ever intended to let you walk out of the palace of Elfham alive. He fought hard to keep you. Cardan? That doesn't sound like him. Half my knights never made it out, he informs me grimly. We got in easily enough, but the bruff itself closed around us. Doorways cracked and shrank. Vines and roots and leaves obstructed our way. Claws like vices on our necks crushed and strangled us. I stared at him for a long moment. And the hiking caused that? I can't believe it of Cardan, whom I left in his chambers, as though he was the one in need of protecting. His guard were neither poorly trained nor poorly chosen, and he knows his power. I am glad to have tested him before going against him in earnest. Are you sure it's wise to go against him at all, then? I asked carefully. It is perhaps not exactly what Tarim would say, but it's not exactly what I would say either. Wisdom is for the meek, he returns, and it seldom helps them as much as they believe it will. After all, as wise as you are, you still married, Locke. Of course, perhaps you are wiser than even that. Perhaps you are so wise you made yourself a widow too. Oriana puts her hand on his knee, a cautioning gesture. He gives a great laugh. What? I made no secret of how little I like the boy. You can hardly expect me to mourn him. I wonder if he would laugh so hard if he knew Tarim had actually done it. Who am I kidding? He would probably laugh even harder. He would probably laugh himself sick. Eventually, the carriage stops, and Maddox jumps down, calling to his soldiers. I slide out and look around, at first disoriented by the unfamiliar landscape and then by the sight of the army before me. Snow covers the ground, and huge bonfires dot it, along with a maze of tents. Some are made of animal skins, others are elaborate affairs of painted canvas and wool and silk, but what is most astonishing is how big the camp is, full of soldiers armed and ready to move against the hiking. Behind the encampment, a little to the west, is a mountain girded in a thick green belt of fir trees, and beside it another tiny outpost, a single tent and a few soldiers. I feel very far away from the mortal world. Where are we? I ask Oriana, who steps out of the carriage behind me, carrying a cloak to place over my shoulders. Near the Cart of Teeth, she says. It's mostly trolls and Holdrap this far north. The Cart of Teeth is the ancillary cart that held the roads and the bomb prisoner, and who exiled Grimamok, the absolute last place I want to be, and with no clear path to escape. Come, Oriana says, let's get you settled. She leads me through the camp, past a group of trolls skinning a moose, past elves and goblins singing war songs, past a traitor repairing a pile of hide armor before a fire. In the distance, I hear the clank of steel, raised voices, and animal sounds. The air is thick with smoke, and the ground is muddy from trampling boots and snow melt. Disoriented, I focus on not losing Oriana in the throng. Finally, we come to a large but practical-looking tent, with a pair of sturdy wooden chairs in front, both covered in sheepskin. My gaze is drawn to an elaborate pavilion nearby. It sits off the ground on golden cloth feet, looking for all the world as though it could scuttle off if its owner gave the command. As I stir, Grimsen steps out. Grimsen the smith, who created the blood crown and many more artifacts of fire, yet hungers for greater and greater fame. He's arrayed so finely that he might be a prince himself. When he sees me, he gives me a sly look. I avert my eyes. The inside of Maddox and Oriana's tent reminds me uncomfortably of home. A corner of it works as a makeshift kitchen, where dried herbs hang in garlands beside dried sausages and butter and cheese. You can have a bath, Oriana says, indicating a copper tub in another corner half filled with snow. We place a metal bar on the fire, then plunge it into the melt, and everything heats up swiftly enough. I shake my head, thinking of how I need to continue to hide my hands. At least in this cold, it will be no surprise for me to keep my gloves on. I just want to wash my face and maybe put on some warmer clothes. Of course, she says, and bustles around the small space to gather up a sturdy blue dress, some hose and boots. She goes out and comes back. After a few minutes, a servant arrives with steaming water in a bowl and places it on a table, along with a cloth. The water is scented with juniper. I will leave you to freshen up, Oriana says, putting on a cloak. Tonight we dine with the Cart of Teeth. I don't mean to inconvenience you, I say, awkward in the face of her kindness, knowing that it isn't for me. She smiles and touches my cheek. You're a good girl, she says, making me flush with embarrassment. I am never that. Still, when she's gone, I am glad to be alone. I snoop around the tent, but find no maps or battle plans. I eat a little cheese. I wash my face and pits and everywhere else I can reach. Then rinse my mouth with a little peppermint oil and scrape my tongue. Finally, I put on the new heavier, warmer clothes and rebraid my hair simply into two tight plaits. I replace my velvet gloves with woolen ones, checking to make sure the stuffing at the tip of my finger looks convincing. By the time I am done, Oriana has returned. She has brought with her several soldiers carrying a pallet of furs and blankets, which she has then arranged into a bed for me, curtained with a screen. I think this will do for now, she says, looking at me for confirmation. I swallow the urge to thank her. Better than I could have asked. As the soldiers depart, I follow them through the tent flap. Outside, I orient myself by the sun as it is about to set and look over the sea of tents again. I am able to pick out factions, Maddox's people, flying his sigil, the crescent moon turned like a bow. Those from the court of teeth have their tents marked with a device that seems to suggest an ominous mountain range, and two or three other courts, either smaller ones or ones that send fewer soldiers. A whole host of other traitors, Grimamok said. I can't help but think, like the spy I was, cannot help but see that I am perfectly positioned to discover Maddox's plan. I am in his camp, in his buried tent. I couldn't cover everything, but that's absolute madness. How long before Oriana or Maddox realizes that I am Yud and not Tarin? I remember the vow Maddox made to me, and when I best you, I will make sure I do it as thoroughly as I would any opponent who has shown themselves to be my equal. It was a backhanded compliment, but it was also a straightforward threat. I know exactly what Maddox does to his enemies. He kills them and then washes his cup in their blood. And what does it matter? I am in exile, pushed out. But if I had Maddox's plans, I could trade them for the end of my exile. Surely Cardan would agree to that, if I gave him the means to save Elham, unless, of course, he thought I was lying. Vivi would say I ought to stop worrying about kings and worry instead about getting home. After my fight with Grimamok, I could demand better jobs from Bayern. Vivi's pride that if we gave up the pretense of living like other humans, we could have a much bigger place, and given the results of the inquest, Tarim probably can't return to Fairy, at least until Maddox takes over. Maybe I should just let it happen. But that brings me to the thing I cannot get past. Even though it's ridiculous, I can't stop the anger that rises in me, lighting a fire in my heart. I am the Queen of Elbham. Even though I am the Queen in exile, I am still the Queen. And that means Maddox isn't just trying to take Cardan's throne, he's trying to take mine.